All right, just getting a couple things situated here before we get started. And today we are going to continue on our site build using Craft 3. And got a few things on the agenda for today. First thing we're going to do is we are going to fix an issue with some deprecation errors that we had, or I guess there's one, so I want to pop in and look at that. And then we're also going to look at adding a couple additional features to the site as well. So I'm going to work on that now. All right, can you hear me there? All right, that's all right. We are good there. I'm going to switch over to the screen and me. There we go. So now, all right, great. Glad you can see me or hear me. Now you should be able to see me as well. All right, so we're going to jump in here. Let me just get situated. There we go. So last time we were working on this blog and kind of just put together the basics that we needed in Craft using Craft 3. And what we did is we created some sections, one for the blog entries itself, a single for the home page, and then a pages section, which is a structure for some pages. Now, I went ahead and added some additional pages, and we'll talk about those in a minute, because we're going to use those to create a nested nav. And it's going to look like this. All right, so don't worry about the design here. This is really just like stock Bootstrap stuff, and it's actually using a plugin, I think, so it's purely for demonstration purposes, but this is what we're going to try to build using a structure and the nav tag in Craft. So all native stuff. First thing I want to do though is look back at utilities and then under deprecation errors. This is something really common that I found myself making a lot of mistakes when I am working on a Craft 3 site. Is I forget things that are Craft 3 required, and so I always check my deprecation errors. You can also do this with the debug toolbar, which you can set up in your account under preferences. You can say show the debug toolbar on the front end or on the control panel. And when you do that, you can see it'll pop up right down here at the bottom. And that's nice because that'll also give you in real time. Didn't do it for me here for some reason. I wonder why it's not showing up. Well, it's showing up here at least for right now. But it will give you the debug toolbar. I might not be logged in since I'm in a private window here. There we go. Let me just log in really quick. All right. There we go. Now it's down here. You can see it down here on the right. And this also gives us deprecation errors as well. There's not any on the home page, but there it is on the entry template. There is one down here that I want to adjust. It says, say blog entry line 14. I'm not using .all here, which of course we know is a new requirement in Craft 3, that we use that with every query rather than just assuming that Craft is going to take that query and execute it for us. We have to execute it. You can also access that in utilities, and then deprecation errors is another place that you want to check. So let me go ahead and pull up my code really quick here. So that's going to be in blog underscore entry. And let's see, what line did it say it was? Let me go back. So line 14. Oh, so it's this. That's interesting. For entry dot category. That doesn't seem right. I wonder why it's doing that. Let me see. Last occurrence was today at 10:07. Looping through element queries directly has been deprecated. All right. So I'm going to clear that, reload. All right, so it's gone. So there we go. I did not have .all added. This here for category in entry category is still considered a query, an element query. So I had to add .all. To be honest, that's actually the first time I've run into that. So I did not realize that we needed to do that. So that is good to know. This is where I am outputting the category for the entry, which is right up here. Looks like there's no category in there. Let me go back to the first blog post. There we go. So it's this category right here. All right. So I have that fixed. So I want to keep an eye on these deprecation errors as I work. So we'll keep this toolbar open down here on the bottom. All right. So let me just take a look at my to-do list for today. So that's the first thing, is to fix that deprecation error, which is done. The next thing to do is, I want to add, or I want the ability to add images to the blog posts, whether at the top or somewhere inside the blog post. So I want to go ahead and do that. And we're going to go first into assets. This is another thing that's changed in Craft 3, is we now have what are called asset volumes. Before I believe they were called sources. And by default in Craft, when you download Craft, you get only the ability to do a local asset volume, which means just on the local drive, or whether it's on your server or locally, or one that is, excuse me, locally accessible. But you can use a first-party plugin to do things like Amazon S3, Google Cloud, Rackspace Cloud, and things like that. But we're going to create one here for images. And since this is a simple blog, we don't need to get too fancy with this. We want them to have their own public URLs, and it'll be craftyblog.dev. Let's see, / we'll just do uploads. I think we'll just do uploads. It's probably good. And the volume type, of course, is a local folder. That's the only one that's available. If we had a plugin installed, that would come up with more than one option. And then the system path here, we need to find as well. My favorite way to do that is to go into my site, go into the web directory, since that's the public directory, going to make the directory called uploads. And I'll just give it some liberal permission since we're local right here. And so we have uploads, and I'm going to go into it and then do pwd, which is going to print out the current working directory. And I'm going to pipe that to, I'm on Mac OS, so it's Unix E. but some of these commands are probably specific to macOS. But I'm going to pipe it to pb copy, which is going to put it on my clipboard. And then I can pop back over and drop it in just like that. It's a nice way of doing it without making a mistake, which is inevitable for me. All right, so this is our new volume and our field layout. I don't think we need a field layout. I guess we could have like a caption or something, but we're going to leave just with just the image for now, no fields or anything like that. All right, so this is images. So that's good. So now we need to create a field, and it's going to go, so when we add a blog post, we're going to be able to add an image as well to it. So first thing I want to look at is in my blog fields, I have blog body here. And that's actually not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go in and look at creating a new field it's called blog image. That's how we've been naming things. And this one's going to be a assets field. And we're going to allow it to have the access to the images volume. And we want to restrict it to just images. We'll limit it to 1. And we'll just say add an image. And then save. All right, so now I need to then, of course, update my entry type with the new field. We only have 1 for our blog. As I discussed last week, blog is a great place to test out different entry types. As an example, like on my personal blog, which I showed last week, I have like these, link type of entries right here that link off to something else with a little comment, and then these little updates in the box, and then like a full like blog post style thing. So those could be treated as 3 different entry types, which they actually are. This is Vue.js on the front end, but Craft on the back end. All right, so entry types is a great or blogs are a great testing ground for entry types if you haven't had a chance to use them yet. So we want to pull over our blog image. I'm going to put it at the top and then save. All right, let's edit a post here. So now we can add an image. We don't have any. So let me go ahead and find one that we can add in there really quick. Give me 1 second. Let's find a quick image that we can use here. There we go. So we'll just add this one and select it. There we go. So now we have this image, which is just it's a big tree, as you can see right there. So we'll use that and then save our entry. All right, so now we have an image added to our entry. So now we need to make that appear on the front end. And we go into blog. We'll start an entry. And we're going to figure out where we want this. Let me actually pull up this is my first blog entry. So we have like this big background thing here. It could go back here. It could also go right here at the top. I guess it could be both. So let's explore that really quick. So looking here, so this is the background image for that masthead. And you can see we're just setting it in line here. Pretty common stuff, but I could use something like, let me just set entry image equals entry dot, what was it, blog image dot 1. So we're going to get the first one, or in this case, the only one. And then here we would output entry image dot get URL like that. See if that works. Reload. There we go. So now we have that image appearing as the background. So that's kind of cool, right? Every blog entry is going to have its own image. Let's go back in and go to our second one. Let me just find another image here. We'll add an image to that. I'll just drag this one and select it and then save. And now we should be able to go back and go to our second blog post. There we go. So now we have an image of the second, or the image from the second blog post. All right. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts as I'm going through this, you can just pop them into chat. I have it here, so I'm monitoring the chat as much as I can. But you can hang out there. BCDO, it's nice to see you as well. I guess I don't see you live, but it's good to see you too. It's good to be here. I'm enjoying using Twitch. I did a stream on Friday, just kind of impromptu. I think on Fridays I just might do an impromptu stream of something other than craft. On this past Friday I did some stuff on Git. The video is up on Twitch. It's also up on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But just trying to get in the habit of just communicating here a little bit more directly than before. So, all right, so now we have like an image here. I guess we could, put it down in here, but this seems to be pretty good now. I don't think we need to do that. I kind of like the way this looks here. So that's the second one. Let's go back to the first one. Yeah, I think I like that. I think that's a good use right there. And now it might be nice to have images in my text as well, but I was just looking at CKEditor, and I probably need to edit the settings for that to get that to work, because I believe, look at my field. So blog body, CKEditor. Yeah, I thought there used to be a way of doing that. Let's see. Rich text. So maybe let's look at Redactor. Let's install that and see. I do kind of miss having the rich text editor built in. It seems like it's something I'm always kind of grabbing for in Craft 3, but then have to redo. But I guess, you get used to it. You learn your new habits and your new workflows. So if I switch this out, it's definitely going to complain that I'm going to get some data loss. Actually, let me go back here again. Yeah, see, I'm not seeing it there. Let me try a Redactor instead. That's what I've been using. So here we go, valuable volumes, images. Yeah, so we're gonna do the standard and then save it. See if I lose any content. Nope, we're good. And now I can actually insert. This is what I wanted. I want to be able to go in and, insert an image as well, like that. It's kind of big, but, I'd probably want to set up some transforms as well to handle that. But since this is pretty big, it should scale down with the, yeah, it's still a little bit too big. So I probably want to set up a transform to restrict that down so it does scale down properly. Probably also need to fix my markup as well to support that. But that's kind of the idea. If I want to do a settings, let's say go into assets, to transforms, we'll create a new transform, we'll say blog post sized. Just going to copy that while I'm here. We're going to crop it. Let's say, I don't know what our width is here actually. It's probably changes, but we'll say, we'll just say 800. And then save it. All right, so now we have that. And inside of my field again, says available transforms, all or whatever we want. We'll say blog post size we have available to us. And now if I go back and edit, which one had it? There we go. Let's delete that and add an image. And here I can select the transform. And you can see it dropped it in. It's a little bit smaller now. Different image too. But now if I reload, you can see now it's been resized a bit. Still a little bit too wide. Probably need to update my markup so it's responsive, since that image is currently not. I believe this system I'm using on Bootstrap requires a little bit of wrapper markup to make those images responsive. I think it actually needs like a class. I could go in here, right, and do, I forget what the class is. I think it's like flexible image or something. Something like that. Let me see if that's it. No. Does anyone know what the Bootstrap class is for flexible image? Let me check my notes. I don't usually use, image fluid, found it. All right, let's try that. This should really, this is not how it should be. I should not have to add class names into my content. It should be done on the parent element. But that, you can see now it actually is responsive. So that's at least workable for now, just for a demo purpose. But you'd really want to do that image responsive on the parent element or another way. But hey, here we go. We got some images. So we're looking a little less boring. Thank you, Sean and Soul of Jazzman, which I like your name. Thank you for dropping that in. So I actually don't use Bootstrap a ton. If I do use a framework, I prefer Foundation for some reason, and I don't know why. I just do. But there we go. So now we have this in here. So we have images. So we got image support. So that's awesome. So the next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to handle this nav here, and I try to keep it as simple as possible while still being able to use some of the nested menus here. I don't want this to get too crazy, but this will be good enough to show it. And maybe at some point you might want to restyle this to match this theme that we're on here. All right, so to do that, first thing we want to do is look at our entries under our pages section, which is a structure. And you can see I have the top level here called about. And that will be what this nav item here is generated by right there. And then we have locations, and under there I have two children with locations. And then there is another sibling of locations called mission, but that is a child of about. So we have this little simple nested structure here. And if you like to use, just looking at, Bulma, yeah, that's the first time I've ever used it was on the personal site, just trying it out. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Honestly, I haven't touched it since I spent like a weekend kind of pulling together a new version of the personal site. I mean, not even a weekend, like the hours of not being a dad and a husband, those off hours I spent doing that. And I actually really liked it. I really liked it. I was looking for something that was really straightforward because I had the extra layer of view already, but I think it's pretty cool. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to use this structure and we're going to generate this menu. And when we're done, it should look just like this, which is right now the static HTML. So let's go into our layout template, which is where that is all stored. So the code for this in terms of like HTML and CSS is all via a Bootstrap, and then also there's a Smart Menus plugin that you can get. And I use that because Bootstrap actually doesn't let you do nested menus by default. Foundation does. I actually just did it yesterday, but Bootstrap does not. So I had to use this third-party plugin to make that happen. So just so you know, the HTML is the least important part, but it's because it's from a framework. You know, I think it can be a little bit distracting because there's just so many classes and elements involved. But the idea is that we're going to use the nav tag in Craft. And I'm not sure how many people have used the nav tag. Let's see. Do you use the rich text or markdown on your personal site? Right now it is rich text, and I actually don't like it at all. And I'm going to change it. I found that using like a headless setup for Craft with rich text it just gets kind of messy because you're having to pass like markup everywhere. So I decided that I didn't want to, I've decided I don't want to do that, but it's still all rich text. I just have to go back and re-import my old content, which is all in Markdown. So I'm not really losing anything by undoing it, but I do have to go down and redo a bunch of stuff. So yeah, not at all happy with doing rich text, storing it as rich text. I've found that it's just kind of a pain, especially if I'm pulling it into, you know, like another tool like Vue or something like that. It's totally doable. It just seems messy. You go through all this work of creating these decoupled systems, and then you're basically streaming in like HTML with your stuff. It just seems kind of weird. But I would have to figure out then, you know, on the Vue side of generating markup from that markdown, which I'm sure is pretty straightforward. I just haven't done it before. All right, so let's go ahead and generate this. So the nav tag. First thing to do before we use the nav tag is I want to get the entries for the nav. So we're going to set a variable called nav pages, and we're going to go ahead and query for and get the entries from our pages section. Like that. And then what we'll do is we'll actually use the nav tag to iterate over that. So the way that this works, well, it's actually easier. I feel like this is a little convoluted. The nav tag is like a special for loop, and it has some special behaviors in it that are, you know, not very straightforward. So as I'm building this out, like things will break, and I found this to be kind of like a little bit of a trial and error thing. But the idea here is that you want to iterate over. I'm going to iterate starting here because navbar nav, this is like my container UL. So I want to iterate starting here. So anywhere I put nav, and then let's say entry, or I could do page, and then in nav pages, which is what I just set right here. So this is kind of like a for loop, right? It's like for entry in nav pages, but I'm just using nav instead of for. And I get a whole bunch of extra functionality from Craft when I do that. So let me go through here and then do at the bottom end nav. All right, so we want to close that out. All right. So now it's going to iterate over, but I have to kind of give it some special instructions for like the children because we're working with a structure section with nesting. But this about here is going to be our first top level entry. So I can do entry.title, and then here where it's hard coded would be entry.url. All right, so let's look at that. I'm gonna reload, I'll go to the home page here so it's a little bit easier to see. And as you can see, we've got all of these items in the structure listed at the top level now. And of course, this isn't right. This isn't how it's going, to end up looking. And then they're all getting this hard-coded submenu here. But as you can see, like as you work through this, things will break, and you'll need to just kind of. It doesn't really build itself up very elegantly. You have to kind of build it and then get it working. So let's go back. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to define where what markdown craft. I'm sorry, not markdown. What markup craft needs to use to generate those child menus, those nested menus. And so if there are children, what they need to use. So let's see. I'm going to get rid of, so drop down menu. So we got UL class drop down menu. All right. And yeah, so if there are children, so if children, again, this is another special tag that's only available inside of the nav tag. So if children, then that is right here, right? Yep, right there. And then end if children. And now what's going to happen is as craft iterates over every entry in nav pages, when it hits here, it's going to say, okay, if there are children, we want to use this markup. And in a minute, we're going to use just wrapper markup. And then it's going to inject everything else into it. So it does it recursively, which is why I mean it gets kind of bonkers to figure it out until you actually have it implemented. So if there are children, then I want to just have this drop-down menu class UL right here. I actually don't need any of this because craft is going to use this to populate this. So it's going to actually take this markup here and populate it. However, I need to smartly add classes to get the styling to work. Because let me show you. If I go back and reload, oh yeah, so all right, so it's giving me a syntax error. It says unexpected end if children tag, but it's expecting the nav tag. Well, the end if children tag is correct, and the if children tag is correct, but what goes in between here is the children tag, and this is where craft knows to insert the children in between this UL right here. So it's expecting this, and that's why it's unexpected. So now if I reload, there we go. So now we have about, and we actually have everything here dynamically working. This is actually being dynamically generated now from craft. So functionally, this is fine. Locations, I can click on location and get that. I can click on, I hover and I get the others, and I can click on Austin, Texas. I can, click on Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I can even click on Mission, which is a standalone item there. So all of that works. However, you can see that the actual UI of it is kind of confusing. There's a down arrow, there's a side arrow here. This should be a side arrow. This should not have one because there's no children, and the other one should not have a side arrow because there's no children. So it's a little wonky in its display, and that has nothing to do with the nav tag per se. It has to do with the CSS and the classes that we're using to generate this menu. However, because craft just goes and recursively reuses this markup that's already here, wherever children is, it goes and grabs what it's already has inside of this nav tag and uses it, that it's basically just using nav item drop down here and then drop down toggle here, which is then triggering all of those arrows that we don't need. So now this is where the tedious part comes, because I'm going to go in and selectively show and hide some of these classes. And there may be a more elegant way to do this, but this is what I've come across with my little experiment here. So starting with the anchor link here, I'm going to say if entry get parent. So if there's a parent, then I'm going to say this is Dropdown item. And if. All right. And then we have nav link. And then for Dropdown toggle, because I don't want that on every item, I will do if entry dot has descendants. So does this current entry in the dropdown have descendants? If it does, we want the little dropdown toggle so you can see the nesting. Then we'll put that there. All right, so let's go ahead and see how that worked. All right, so now things are looking a lot better, right? Just based on those classes. So I have locations, I can go out and do that and click on one and mission, there we go. Now I'm just doing it where I'm just using this one here at the top level. There's other ways, obviously, we could structure it so I could have a whole list of navigation here. The concepts are exactly the same in terms of the nav tag, but you would you'd want to adapt that to your project. Now I can also go in, let's say under locations, and create a new child entry, and I can say something like Hamburg, Germany. Let's put in some text and then save it. And that should be reflected immediately. So we can see our Hamburg, Germany location. So we have a nice dynamic menu that is nested and all based on the structure for pages. Now, one thing we could do if we wanted a little bit more control is, instead of having this be called pages, we could do sometimes I'll call this like about, and I'll have a different structure section for each main section of the site that I know might have multiple pages in it like this. And that helps us keep this from getting really unwieldy. That code actually could get really unwieldy too, but if you have them broken out into different sections, you could actually have be a lot more explicit what you're doing where. It does not allow you then to as easily reorganize the navigation at the top level, like reorder things. But I don't know, I'm kind of skeptical of requiring that. I always thought that was a little bit of over-engineering for not a lot of utility. But that's just my opinion. I think that navigations probably shouldn't be sort of readjusted just kind of on the fly like that, since they tend to be a pretty well thought out portion of the site. What plugin do you use to populate the lorem ipsum text? This is it's not a plugin, it's TextExpander, which is an app on macOS. There's versions of that type of app for all platforms. But I use TextExpander, and I just use my trigger is semicolon, and then I just use lorem. I mean, I know you can see that Sublime has it too, but I just use that. It's called TextExpander itself for macOS, organic. So yeah, that's what I use. Really handy for dropping in content while developing a site, so I don't make assumptions about how content's going to lay out. So I always try to load in as much as I can. I have lorem ipsum 1, 2, and 3, and that's the number of paragraphs. Yeah, John, there's Keyboard Maestro, which I actually also own. Yeah, I agree. TextExpander is a lot easier to set up. And Sean says Windows is Phrase Express is another one. There was another one that was really popular in Windows. I don't remember what it's called. Something, yeah, I can't remember now. But yeah, they're all kind of the same. They let you do TextExpanders. It lets you do like little macros and code inside of the snippet. So I can run like, you know, a little command line program or something inside of the snippet. I have all sorts of different ones that I use. One of my actually, I think it's, I don't know if I still have it. Yeah, no, I don't. I used to have one called SSH clip, which would automatically grab my SSH key and copy it to my clipboard. But it looks like I don't have it enabled anymore. But anyway, total aside. All right, let's get a quick time check here. All right, so that is the nav menu. If you guys have any questions about this, you can drop those in the chat. I think, you know, I think it's pretty cool for what it does. It's a very specific tag, so it's not really something that you're going to use outside of a nested structure section. So you can use the nav tag for a flat structure section, but it's actually suggested in the documentation that if you're going to use, if you have a flat structure section, and by that I mean, you know, where it's just all one level, and you don't need the nesting, and you want to create a navigation, the recommendation at that point is to use a standard for loop. Just grab the entries like we did right here, grab these, and then just use a for loop, because you don't need this recursiveness here with if children and then children, because there aren't any children. So it'd actually be a little bit leaner to just use a for loop. I'm not sure any other advantages of what the nav tag offers other than that. I haven't used it a ton, but it is proven to be very effective here in this site and another sample site that I did for my Up and Running with Craft course, which I just I'm in the last throes of editing on that, and then that'll be like, it's like 4.5 hours or something of all in Craft 3. So let me just clean this up, take out this markup, and I think that we are good. We are good there. Environment var in Craft 3. I can talk about that. I'm not going to do that today, but I appreciate the suggestion because I can add that to something that I will talk about. All right, so let me see what else I had on my list. Those were the main things. So base URL. I guess, you know, just really quickly, the way that you want to do this is you can set anything in your .env file, which is the new way of handling, you know, like environment specific settings. And you can see here's mine, you know, it's just, most of it's like connection information like database server and stuff like that. But in the general config file, you know, you can have these environment settings as well, but you could actually then pull in from the env file, because you have that get env option. And let me actually pull up the docs that I did on this. So it's changes, let's see. Yeah, I'll just pull this up really quick. Maybe it's not in there. Let's see. Maybe it's here now. Install, create new project. Huh, where is, let me just search in the project really quick. Your configuration, okay. Yeah, so here you can set the well, this is using like a base URL as an example here, which you're just asking about. But you can set that. And then as you can see here, you can use get env asset base URL, or, it could be anything, and you set it here. But let me probably be more helpful if I did something a little bit more official on that. But there is a way of using the base URL or the environment vars in Craft. You just have to set them a little bit differently. All right. So this is where we're at on our site. We're making a little bit of progress. I also wanted to do some category stuff today. And I wanted to try to get the setup working. So if I'm on a post like this one, and I click on the category, that it'll give me like a listing of all the categories. And that's really the only other thing that I wanted to handle today. And I don't really have like a template for that, but what I was going to do is grab the home page template, and I have this category underscore .twig template. I was going to paste that in there. So at least now, like, I get the home page, but this is going to be replaced with the name of the category and the description. So to do that, and this is kind of like a little trick. I can just reuse like any listing template. The home page in this case is the listing template. So because we're in a category entry, and Craft knows this because we told it. When we created that category group called blog, for the settings, I said the template to use for this is blog underscore category. So now it knows when it's rendering that template that it is seeing a category view. So we automatically get category, and we can do category.title, and then category dot, what did I call it? Let's see. Oh, maybe I didn't put a description in there at all. Thought I did. I did not. All right, so we'll leave that out for right now. Can add that in a second. So let's comment that out. All right, category title. So now if I go back and reload, now you see there's the category title, and these would be the entries that are filed under that. All right, so how would I do that then? So let's take a look here. Oops, let's see. One second, just trying to find something really quick. All right, so it's going to be basically the same thing as before, where we say for entry in Craft entries.section.blog, since I'm reusing this from the home page. And I guess I could limit it, but instead I'm going to say related to, and then pass in the category since we have access to that. And then everything else should flow right into place. So let's see if it does. Can reload. There we go. So now we get the actual entry. There's only one here. This navigation I think we'll do in the future. We haven't, for the pagination, I mean, we can do that another time. But there we go. So now we're filed, this is filed under Craft CMS. So I may want to do something like, put this here and say filed under. So let's take that out. Filed under Craft CMS just to give it a little bit of a thing. And then we have our entries here. So I have one, but just to prove to myself that it works. Which one was that? First blog entry. So let's go into the second one, and we can add a category Craft CMS, select it, save, and then reload. And there we go. Now we have our second post as well. So now we basically have a really quick category listing that just lists all of the entries that are filed under that category. And if we had more, we'd want to enable this, like next as pagination. Might do that on a future live stream. Go ahead and tweak that. So that's the state of the site right now. So we have our nice little crafty blog, kind of a simple blog with a structure section where we generated this nav here. Some real basic content, but we also enabled images. So when you click on a blog post, it drops that image into the header. And we can also add images into the text now because we switched from CKEditor to Redactor. And then when you go to a category, you can also now get a listing of all the entries filed in that category. So that is the deal for today. I already have another stream for next week where I wanted to deploy this to a server. I'm trying to figure out how to do that on Twitch without sort of compromising like other stuff. And then also, I think I'm gonna add. What was I just talking about? Oh, the pagination here. I want to add this in for the home page and also for any of these listing pages, like also the category page. So we'll do both that pagination and then we'll deploy the site. And since this is Craft 3, we can deploy it without having, we can deploy it and use Composer on the server if we want to. So let me just go ahead and stage all of this here, and add. I'm not doing like very good commits here. We'll say this is from live stream 2. There we go. We'll push that up to our repository, and we're version controlling all this so we can deploy right from the repository, and we'll be able to run like Composer and update, pull down all of our dependencies, and then hopefully deploy this site. So that'll be for next week. We'll do that. All right. So is there any? Thank you, Soul of Jasmine. I'm glad that you are enjoying the live stream. I'm going to hang out here for a couple minutes if anyone has any additional questions or any thoughts. Otherwise, this video will be up on Twitch, and I send it over to YouTube as well. If you want to go to youtube.com/MajingoLLC, somebody already had just Majingo, unfortunately. You can see it there, plus other videos, and you can check it out. But thanks everybody for following along today. And let me switch over. There we go. Get a big video myself. Thanks for following along. I'm going to be back next week doing it, and subscribe to Twitch if you don't already, or I'll post it on Twitter, but I'll probably do like an impromptu stream later this week, most likely on Friday, on something other than craft, but that's related, like, Git version control, stuff like that. So definitely check that out too. All right, so let's hide this. All right, so that is it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one.